Welcome to the channel, where real stories speak louder than fiction. If this moment moved you, we'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Drop your location and thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss tomorrow's story. It's one you won't want to skip. Each day, we bring you powerful emotional journeys that remind us of what truly matters: courage, compassion, and connection. Thanks for being part of this growing community. Your presence means more than you know. Mocked for using food stamps. Then he said what no one else dared to say. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon at a neighborhood grocery store in suburban Dallas. The sun outside was hot, the air thick with the hum of Texas heat. Inside, the store felt cooler but no less heavy. Shoppers moved slowly, scanning shelves, checking prices, and waiting in lines. At self-checkout, tucked in the corner near the frozen food, stood Danielle Moore, a 35-year-old single mother holding her 4-year-old son, Caleb, close to her side. Danielle wore a faded Navy uniform from the cleaning service she worked, for on weeknights, her hands trembled slightly as she tried to scan a 12-ounce box of cereal and a pack of diapers. She fumbled with her wallet, hoping her Lone Star card still had enough balance left to cover it. Caleb, with wide eyes and a thumb in his mouth, clung to her hip quietly, the kind of silence kids learn too early when they sense stress in the air. Behind her, 3 white men in their late 20s leaned on their carts, watching with amused expressions. Baseball caps backward, voices loud, they began making snide remarks. One of them, red-faced and stocky, held up a can of beans and tossed it into his cart as if he were shooting a basketball. "Hey, think I get a discount if I flirt with the cashier?" he joked, laughing loudly. His friend joined in. "Come on, man. She's just teaching her kid how to hustle early. Gotta admire that grind, right?" The third leaned in with a cruel smirk and added, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Bet she's got 3 baby daddies minimum." The laughter that followed was sharp, mean, and soaked in judgment. Danielle froze, her lips pressed into a thin line. She kept her head down, refusing to react, but her hands shook harder now. No one around said a word. A nearby cashier stared down at her screen, pretending not to hear. A couple in the next lane glanced over briefly, then turned away. It was as if the entire store had agreed, silently, to ignore what was happening. Danielle had experienced this before. Not these exact men, not these exact words, but the feeling was the same. The shame, the isolation, the deep, aching wish to just disappear. She wasn't asking for anything extra. All she wanted was to buy what her son needed and go home. But instead, she had become the unwilling subject of public cruelty. And perhaps, worst of all, was the silence. The absolute crushing silence of bystanders who chose not to see. People who could have stepped forward, who could have said something, anything, but didn't. In that moment, surrounded by fluorescent lights and strangers pretending not to notice, Danielle felt small. She felt invisible. And most painfully, she felt alone. What she didn't know, what no one expected, was that someone a few aisles away was watching. Someone who wouldn't let this moment pass like all the others. Just as Danielle lowered her eyes and tried to focus on the blinking screen in front of her, someone else, quiet, unnoticed, had already stopped walking. A few aisles over, Marcus Reed stood frozen beside the refrigerated drinks. A 48-year-old former Marine, now a private fitness coach, Marcus had come in for a quick pickup: almond milk, protein bars, and a 6-pack of recovery drinks. He wore a gray hoodie pulled low, a baseball cap, and wireless earbuds that weren't even on. It was his usual way of avoiding small talk. He wasn't looking to be recognized. He wasn't looking to be involved. But something about the sound, those voices, the sharp laughter, the way it cut through the store, pulled him in. He turned slightly, just enough to see her. Danielle, mid-30s, shoulders tight, hands trembling, a boy on her hip trying to make himself smaller. The men behind her were still talking, still laughing, still trying to draw attention like it was some kind of sport. One made a kissing noise, another mimed swiping a card. Marcus didn't move at first. his jaw clenched, his hoodie damp with sweat from earlier training. But it wasn't the words that stopped him. It was the look on Danielle's face. He'd seen that face before, not in a mirror, but in his past. His own mother had worn that same expression in a checkout line when he was just a boy, holding on to dignity with one hand, groceries in the other, pretending not to hear the insults, swallowing her pride just to make it through. He dropped his gym bag beside the cooler. Then calmly, deliberately, Marcus walked, not fast, not loud, just with purpose, like a storm rolling in under quiet skies. No one noticed him at first, not until he stopped just 3 feet behind the men. "Step back," Marcus said, voice low but firm. All 3 turned, the heavy-set one squinted. "You talking to us?" Marcus didn't blink. "Let her pay," he said, "then walk away." Danielle looked up, startled. There was no recognition in her eyes. She didn't see a former Marine or a local coach. She saw something she hadn't seen all day, someone standing between her and the noise. "Mind your business, bro," one of the guys muttered, puffing out his chest. "This is my business now," Marcus replied evenly, "because I don't let men bully moms in front of their kids." Then the guy in the camo jacket stepped forward and shoved Marcus in the chest. It wasn't much, but it was a mistake. Marcus didn't stumble. He didn't react. He simply moved, grabbing the man's wrist, twisting it, guiding him down onto one knee with a calm, controlled motion that said everything without raising a fist. "I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. "But I could. Think about that." The man winced. His friends froze. Danielle stood stunned, and the entire store finally went silent. Someone had spoken, someone had seen, and everything was about to change. The store was still. No one moved. No one spoke. The tension hung in the air like static, and in the middle of it all, Danielle stood frozen, her debit card still in her trembling hand, her son clinging to her like he was afraid to let go. Marcus stepped back from the man now kneeling on the glossy tile floor. He released the grip slowly, deliberately, and the man scrambled to his feet, pride bruised more than anything else. None of them said another word. The swagger they walked in with had evaporated, and as quickly as they'd come, they backed off, carts rolling behind them like forgotten weapons. Danielle's eyes were wide, her breath shallow. She wasn't sure what just happened, only that it was over. Mostly. Marcus turned to her, his voice softer now, like switching gears. "You okay?" She gave a short nod, blinking back whatever emotion threatened to spill over. He noticed the cereal box on the floor and picked it up without a word, placing it gently back in her cart. Then he paused, looked her in the eye, and said something that didn't sound like a rehearsed line or a cliché. "You don't owe anyone an explanation for surviving." Danielle stared at him. "What?" she whispered. He didn't repeat it. He didn't have to. "I saw you looking down," he said, "like you were about to apologize for using that card, like you had to explain yourself to people who don't matter, but you don't. You're doing what you've got to do, for him. That's enough, that's more than enough." She didn't know what to say, neither did the people around them, and maybe that was the point. An older woman stepped forward quietly and offered to walk Danielle out. Danielle nodded and swiped her card. The machine beeped. The moment ended, or so they thought. From across the store near the candy aisle, a teenager lowered his phone. He'd been filming from the moment Marcus confronted the men, and within 10 minutes of posting it, the video was already on its way to becoming something much bigger than a store aisle confrontation. By nightfall, it had reached TikTok's For You page. By morning, it had 200,000 views. People weren't just watching, it was resonating. The clip didn't have music or filters or dramatic effects, just raw footage, a man in a gray hoodie, a child on his mother's hip, and a simple moment of quiet bravery. But what stuck with people was that line, "You don't owe anyone an explanation for surviving." It was quoted, reposted, and shared under stories about food stamps, job loss, single parenthood, and silent battles fought every day. It became a digital rallying cry, a reminder that dignity isn't something granted by others. It's something you hold even when the world tries to strip it away. Marcus didn't know the video had gone viral. He wasn't chasing that. He just saw something wrong and chose not to look away. But now the world was looking at him and listening. By the time Marcus opened his phone the next morning, it was already too late. The battery was almost dead, his voicemail was full, and his name, Marcus Reed, was trending across every major platform. He hadn't posted the video. He hadn't even known it was recorded. But the moment, the quiet confrontation in aisle 6, was now living a life of its own. News outlets had clipped it. Influencers reposted it. Podcasts were already dissecting it. And everywhere, in bold white captions across videos, was the same line. You don't owe anyone an explanation for surviving. But while the world watched Marcus, something deeper was happening with Danielle. She sat on her worn-out couch that morning, her son Caleb curled up beside her, finally asleep. A friend had texted her the video. At first, she didn't want to click. The shame was still too fresh, the humiliation too close. But curiosity pulled her in. She watched it once, then again, and again. She heard her own voice, quieter than she remembered. She saw herself shrink as the laughter echoed. But then she saw Marcus, calm, present, unshaken. She saw him pick up that box of cereal like it was the most normal thing in the world. And she wept. Not from sadness, but from relief, from recognition. Later that afternoon, she opened the Notes app on her phone. Her fingers hovered for a second. Then she started typing. She wrote about losing her job at the hospital laundry after the third round of layoffs, about picking up motel cleaning shifts at $9.25 an hour, about choosing between gas and groceries, about the sting of pulling out her Lone Star card and hearing people sigh behind her in line, about Caleb asking, "Mom, do people hate us because don't have money?" And then she wrote about Marcus. She described the look on his face, focused but not angry. The way he stepped in, not to fight but to protect. She called him the still point in a world that spins too fast. And she ended her post with a sentence she hadn't planned to say. Some people throw punches, others just stand still. So the rest of us can breathe. She hit post, then closed the app. An hour later, it had 100 shares. By midnight, 10,000. Her story had joined a rising chorus, people posting their own experiences of quiet survival, single moms, veterans, students, minimum wage workers, the kind of people who rarely get seen, much less defended. News outlets started quoting her now, too. That final line, "So the rest of us can breathe," was plastered under images of resilience, solidarity, and quiet strength. But for Danielle, the real shift wasn't digital. It was personal, because for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like someone surviving in the shadows. She felt seen, and that changed everything. 1 week later, the noise had started to fade. The trending tags slowed down. The media cycle, hungry as ever, had turned its attention to something new. But for Marcus Reed, none of that mattered. He hadn't spoken to reporters, hadn't done interviews, and he didn't post a single word. What happened in that grocery store wasn't about publicity. It was about presence, about doing the one thing the world so often avoids, not looking away. That Friday afternoon, Marcus pulled into the parking lot of the Southside Community Center on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. No fanfare, no entourage. Just a duffel bag full of used boxing gloves, worn sneakers, and extra mouthguards, gear he'd collected over the years. He didn't come to train. He came to give. Inside, the place buzzed with the soft chaos of children and the quiet grind of everyday people. Laughter spilled from the daycare room. Teens shot hoops in the gym. At the front desk, Marcus was about to drop off his bag and leave quietly, until a familiar voice stopped him cold. "Marcus?" He turned. Standing near the playroom door was Danielle, a binder tucked under one arm, her other hand resting gently on Caleb's shoulder. Her smile was calm, unshaken, like she'd been there all along. "I volunteer here on Fridays," she said. "Help with the parenting classes. They pay me in juice boxes and crayon drawings. Caleb stepped forward, holding a juice pouch in both hands, his eyes just as wide as before. He looked up at Marcus and said with the kind of seriousness only a 4-year-old could deliver, "You helped my mom." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, I guess I did." Danielle laughed, not out of amusement, but out of release. "He's been practicing that line for days," she said. Said he wanted to say it himself. Marcus smiled and handed over the duffel bag. "Got some gear they might use," she nodded. "That's your thing, huh? Giving quietly." "Loud doesn't always help," he said, shrugging. Then she pulled a folded sheet of paper from her binder and held it out. "I wrote something. For Caleb, kind of a letter, kind of a promise. I want him to know that surviving isn't weakness. It's a kind of strength." Marcus took the paper and slipped it into his jacket. No thank yous. None were needed. They stood for a beat, letting the moment breathe. Kids laughed in the background. Sunlight poured through the windows. And for once, everything felt still. As Danielle turned to walk back to her class, she paused. "If you ever want that homemade peach cobbler," she said with a soft grin, "you know where to find me." Marcus chuckled. "That might be dangerous." She disappeared around the corner. Later that night, back in his car, Marcus unfolded her letter and read it by the dashboard light. The last line hit him like nothing else ever had. "He'll know he's enough, not because the world told him, but because I did." And for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt something stay, not viral, not loud, just real. If you've made it this far into the story, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in that grocery store? Would you have spoken up? Have you ever been in Danielle's shoes, standing in silence, hoping someone would say something? But no one did? Or maybe you were Marcus, someone who couldn't stand by any longer. This story isn't just about one moment. It's about the moments that happen every single day. In stores, schools, streets, where people are judged for struggling, where kindness is rare, and silence becomes complicity. Drop a comment below and tell us how this story made you feel. Have you ever felt invisible in a place where you should have belonged? Or have you ever witnessed someone stand up, not for attention, but because it was right? Your voice matters here. Let's build a space where survival isn't shameful, where people see each other and where stories like Danielle's and Marcus's remind us, sometimes standing still is the most powerful thing we can do. Tell us your story.